Morning, everyone. We are on 96A1, towards the last paragraph on 96A1. It's Tzadi Vav, Amud Aleph, a few lines down. And we are trying to figure out who is the Tana who holds that Shabbos is a time that a person is able to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin, right? The Gemara, if you recall, yesterday spoke about the fact that the Tana Kama clearly is of the opinion that Shabbos is a time of fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin, and there was, something which is forbidden on a technicality, but it's something which is still a mitzvah, technically a mitzvah on Shabbos, but it's something that we still don't do. But again, the Tana Kama was holding that Shabbos is the time for tefillin. We initially thought it was Rameir, but ultimately we rejected it being Rameir, and now we're trying to find out who is the person, who is the Tana. Is there an opinion out there? I mean, the Tana of the Mishnah says, the Tana Kama of our Mishnah said, implied that Shabbos is time for wearing tefillin. The problem is we're trying to figure out who it is. It's not Rameir, and now we're going to go on a little chase to figure out who is of the opinion, who is this anonymous Tana who holds that Shabbos is the time for wearing tefillin. Okay, so that's the backdrop of our Gemara today. So the Gemara says, Man Shabbos lei, Shabbos is man tefillin. Who is the Tana who holds that Shabbos is the time for wearing tefillin? The Gemara first tries saying it's Rabbi Akiva. Why? The Tanya was taught in the Brisa, Vishamarta sachuka hazos lemoada miyamim yamima. Okay, so this pasuk is found in Shemos, and just for those who don't know all of Tanakh by heart, myself included, you should know that the passage is as follows. The Psukim talk about the mitzvah of Karban Pesach, okay, and then it talks about Tefillin, and then it says this pasuk, Vishamarta, you should be careful, and Sachuk about this law, Limoada, okay, which is it's a point of time, miyamim yamima, from day to day. Okay, so now the Tana Kama of this brisa says, what does it mean yamim? What does the word day teach you? Velo leilos, teaching me that this mitzvah, obviously the mitzvah of tefillin, is not during the night. Miyamim, the fact that it says from days, doesn't say yamim, it says miyamim, where 96A2 teaches us velo kol yamim, implying not every day, meaning this mitzvah is not applicable every day. Prat l'shabbasos v'yamim tovim, to exclude Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, Divrei Rav Yossi Glili. So Rav Yossi Glili learns this pasuk is, again, the section of the Torah it talks about Korban Pesach, then it has a pasuk about Tefillin, and then it has this pasuk. And this pasuk has the word miyamim. Okay, miyamim. What does it mean, miyamim? So Rav Yossi Glili means yamim, days and not nights. Meaning the mitzvah of tefillin is only during the day and not at night. And miyamim, why does it say from days, implying not every day of the week do you have this mitzvah? Which days are exempt? Shabbos and Yom Tov. Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, so that's the opinion of Rav Yossi Glili. However, Rabbi Kiva Omer lo nemar chuka zo ella le'inyan Pesach b'lvad. This pasuk that says decree, okay, this pasuk of Hishamar Lecha, etc., is a reference not to the mitzvah of tefillin, which is a pasuk immediately before, but rather refers to the passage before, which is primarily focused on Karban Pesach. How he interprets that pasuk, not relevant for our discussion. The point is, he does not use this pasuk, which exempts you from wearing tefillin, or tells you can't wear tefillin on Shabbos or at night. He does not use this pasuk. Okay, so what comes out? What comes out is that, according to Rabbi Kiva, the pasuk, the source, the only source that we're currently aware of, that says you are exempt from wearing tefillin on Shabbos, the only pasuk that says you're exempt from wearing on Shabbos, according to Rabbi Kiva, is not used about tefillin, and therefore it would come out that Rabbi Kiva would say you are obligated to wear tefillin on Shabbos. With me? Yeah. So Gemara says, wait, that can't be. We learned in the Mishnah, ha-Pesach va-Mila mitzvos aseh. Pesach and Bris Mila are mitzvos aseh. Okay, lema de lo Rabbi Kiva. This would seemingly not go like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, di Rabbi Akiva, because if it's like Rabbi Akiva, kevan demoki la bePesach, since he just applied that pasuk of Hishamer, you shall observe this decree in reference to Karban Pesach, lav nami ika. That means that it's not only a positive mitzvah, it's also a negative mitzvah. Okay, now why is the word Hishamer? Let's read a few more lines. Kid Ravi Avin Amravi Lies, Amravi Avin Amravi Lai, Komakum Shnemar Hishamer Pen Ve'al. Anytime you see the words Hishamer, which means take care, Pen means lest, Ve'al means and do not, Eino Ella Belosa say. What that means is that there's a negative commandment. Right? So we have a Mishnah. So again, right now we're trying to say that Rabbi Akiva is the one who holds that Shabbos is a time that you technically would wear tefillin. Okay? Now, based on why is that? Because the pasuk of Hishamer is a reference to Karban Pesach and not to tefillin. Yeah? You still with me? Right? Again, there's a pasuk that says Hishamer. That pasuk is the pasuk where that right now, the only source that we are aware of right now that exempts you from wearing tefillin on Shabbos is from that pasuk of Hishamer. Okay? Rabbi Kiva says that pasuk of Hishamer does not apply to tefillin. It applies to Pesach. Okay, so if we'd stop here, we'd say, great. So now we have a Tana, we have Rabbi Kiva, who says that there is no exemption for Shabbos, for wearing tefillin on Shabbos from the Pasuk Yishamer, and Rabbi Kiva is the one who holds that Shabbos is the day that you should be wearing tefillin. Fine, but there's a problem. What's the problem? Because if you're telling me the Pasuk of Yishamer is going to be applicable to Karban Pesach, and we just learned a second ago that Yishamer means it's a lo saseh, it's a negative commandment. There is a statement which we assumed until now was universal, which told us that Pesach is a positive mitzvah, and yet, according to Rabbi Kiva, the Pasuk of Yishamer, which implies a negative commandment, is said in reference to Karban Pesach. Right? So the Gemara says, no. Afilu tem Rabbi Kiva. We could still say that the Mishnah goes like Rabbi Kiva. Why? Hishamer de lav. Hishamer de aseh. Yes, it's true. Rabbi Avin said that Hishamer is telling you that there is a negative prohibition. But maybe that's only when it's in the context of something which you should not do. In other words, sometimes the Torah says don't do something. It doesn't say it in the most explicit fashion, but it's something that should not be done. And it says the word Hishamer. Right? There, the word Yishamer, even though it doesn't say lo sigzol, right? Which is, lo sigzol is like a clear-cut negative commandment. Sometimes it'll say Yishamer lecha, and it'll say don't do something, and with the word Yishamer, right? There, the word Yishamer means a negative commandment. However, maybe Rabbi Kiva holds that Yishamer in the context of a positive commandment, meaning Korban Pesach is a do or don't do? Do, right? So Hishamer is saying something, do something, right? And it just says Pesach is a positive commandment, and Hishamer is saying, do this mitzvah, be careful about the performance of this mitzvah. In that context, Hishamer is going to be a positive mitzvah, right? And therefore, there's no question from there. However, the Gemara asks from the following: the summer Rabbi Kiva, Shabbos man tefillin hu. Do you really want to tell me that Rabbi Kiva holds that Shabbos is a time for fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin? But Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Kiva says, Yachal yaniach adam tefillin m'shabbos v'yom tovim. You may think that a person should put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Tamalomar v'haya lecha os yadcha. The pasuk in reference to tefillin says it should be a sign on your arm. Misha tzrichin os. Only on days that you need to have a sign are tefillin going to be worn. Yatzu elu, excluding Shabbos and Yom Tov, where you don't need a sign. Why? Shein gufat os, because Shabbos and Yom Tov themselves are a sign, and therefore you do not need to wear tefillin. So it comes out very clearly. Rabbi Kiva, it's true. Rabbi Kiva does not use the pasuk of that exempts the nights, the pasuk of Hishamer, but he has a different pasuk. He has a different limud. The reason we don't wear tefillin, so clearly we see Rabbi Kiva saying explicitly that on Shabbos you do not wear tefillin because the whole idea of tefillin is it should be a sign. You wear tefillin because it shows that you're connected to God. But on Shabbos and Yom Tov, your whole essence is a sign. Shabbos is called tonight, os. Yom Tov is included in that, and therefore there is no need. It's actually forbidden to wear tefillin because it's almost negating Shabbos and Yom Tov, and therefore we see explicitly Rabbi Kiva says Shabbos and Yom Tov are not days that you wear tefillin. Okay, so basically what comes out over here is Rav Yossi Aglili learns it from the pasuk of Hishamer. That pasuk exempts both Shabbos and night. Rabbi Kiva learns that you don't need to wear tefillin on Shabbos because from the pasuk v'hayla os ayadcha, from the pasuk of it should be a sign. Rabbi Kiva does not have a source to exempt wearing tefillin at night. Okay, it might be on a rabbinic level, as we'll see soon, that you don't wear tefillin on nights, but according to Rabbi Kiva, there is no biblical pasuk to exempt wearing tefillin on nights. Rather, it is only, but the only biblical pasuk that exempts wearing tefillin is specifically for wearing it on Shabbos. Okay? Yeah.
We've established, we're trying to figure out whether you're commanded to be wearing on Shabbos or that you're allowed to wear.
So it's going to be like this. Yeah, so I'm blurring the two a little bit. It's a good question. So the bottom line is that the how should we say this? The question is really if you're allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it to simplify. It'll be the question is, are you allowed to wear tefillin? Right? Everyone's going to agree that people are not wearing tefillin on Shabbos. The question is it because it's like a rabbinic decree saying you shouldn't wear it, or because you're not allowed to wear it? Right? And the Tanna Kama was saying Shabbos is a time for wearing tefillin. It might be on a technicality. Rabbinically, we're not going to wear it, but it would be something which we should be wearing. Right? So Rabbi Kiva over here or Rabbi Yossi Glili are both psukim telling us you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos. Now, it's worth noting this whole idea of os for Shabbos and Yom Tov, where it's Shabbos clearly it says Shabbos is os. Ki osi beini v'nechem. Shabbos is os. Shabbos is a sign, and the Mefarshim explain that wearing tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov, which is included in that, would be like a disgrace to Shabbos. It would be basically saying like Shabbos is not a good enough os, and therefore we have to do something extra. So therefore it's forbidden to wear. The question is, what about Chol Hamoed? Is Chol Hamoed actually included in that? Is Chol Hamoed seen as like as a sign or not? According to some, it's forbidden to wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed because Chol Hamoed is also a sign, and there are others who say no, Chol Hamoed is not a sign. Why? Because on Chol Hamoed you don't have that same. It's not as evidence that you are keeping Yom Tov. Why? Because you're allowed to do certain malach, you're allowed to do certain types of work, and therefore there are those who say that on Chol Hamoed you are obligated to wear tefillin, and that is a massive machlokas. On Chol Hamoed you'll see some people wearing tefillin, some people not wearing tefillin. That's based on this idea of does the word os apply to Chol Hamoed or not? Okay. Fine. Let's go a little further. Ella hai Tanahu. Rather, we want to say it's the following Tana. So we've rejected it being Rabbi Kiva. Why? Because Rabbi Kiva learns it from the word os. So rather, we're going to say it's the following. The Tana is taught in a brisa. Haneir balayla. Person's awake at night. Okay. Keep in mind, back in the day, at night people would go to sleep. We live in artificial time, I guess we'll call it. Another artificial. Well, we stay up at night because we have artificial light, right? Back in the day, when it got dark, candles were expensive. People went to sleep at night. The day was defined by sunlight, and therefore people would typically always be asleep at night. Okay, but the Gemara therefore says a person to awake at night, ratza choletz, if they want, they could remove their tefillin. Ratza maniach, if they want, they're allowed to leave them on. Okay, Divi Rabbi Nassan, those are the words of Nassan. Rabbi Nassan clearly holds that you're allowed to wear tefillin at night. Yonasan Hakitoni Omer, okay, this other Tana, Yonasan Hakitoni says, Eimanichan tefillin b'layla, you are not allowed to wear tefillin at night. Okay, so we have Yonasan Hakitoni, not a well-known Tana, saying you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. Now, what pasuk did we have? So fine, he says you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. So Midalayla l'Tana Kama zman tefillin. Now, according to the Tana Kama, you are allowed to wear tefillin at night. So the Gemara is going to assume, based on the original pasuk of Rav Yossi Aglili, that night and Shabbos go hand in hand, right? In as much as he's saying that you're allowed to wear tefillin at night, right? Clearly, he rejects the limud of Yamim, right? So he's also going to reject the limud of Miyamim, right? Yamim said day, not night. Miyamim said weekday, not Shabbos. So the fact that the Tanakama of Nassan says that you can wear it at night, clearly he disagrees that whole limud, and therefore Shabbos nami zman tefillin, and therefore he would also say that Shabbos is the time for tefillin. Okay, 96a3. The Gemara says no. What are you talking about? Dilma sfira le laila zman tefillin hu. Maybe he will hold that you're allowed to wear tefillin at night. However, Shabbos loves zman tefillin hu, but he'll still reject the idea that Shabbos is a time for tefillin. Maybe he'll say that Shabbos you can't wear it. Where do we have a source for that? Dashamina le Rabbi Kiva. Amar. Rabbi Kiva's had this is the position of Rabbi Kiva. Amar, who said laila zman tefillin hu. Rabbi Kiva does not have any source to exempt you from wearing tefillin at night. However, he does have the source of os saying that you don't wear it on Shabbos. Shabbos loves zman tefillin hu, saying that Shabbos is not a time for the mitzvah of tefillin. Okay, so in other words, the factor of Nassan says you're allowed to wear tefillin at night does not tell me anything about whether or not he holds you're allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos, right? Because the two are not necessarily going hand in hand. There are two sources, right? There are two sources that exempt you from wearing tefillin on Shabbos. One is Yamim Yamima, right? And if you use the Yamim Sukkim, then you exempt Shabbos and you exempt night, right? And that's the opinion of Yosef Lili. But then there's another pasuk of Os, which only exempts you from wearing tefillin on Shabbos and says nothing about night. We know Rabbi Kiva holds of that, and now we had Rav Nassan saying that you do not wear tefillin at night. Okay, sorry, that you are allowed to wear tefillin at night, excuse me. So we said, he also holds you can't wear it on Shabbos. Who says? He also says you could wear it on Shabbos. Who says? Night and Shabbos are not connected. Because yes, Rav Yossi Glili connects the two, because he learns it from the pasuk of Yamim Yamima, Mi Yamim Yamima, but Rabbi Kiva has a pasuk that only exempts for Shabbos and says nothing about night. And therefore, both Rabbi Kiva and Rav Yossi Glili, and Rav Nassan, would hold that you could wear tefillin at night, but they would still hold you're exempt from Shabbos. So we still have not found a Tana who holds that Shabbos is not a time for tefillin. Okay, here's where we introduce the more controversial Gemara, which came up a couple of years ago as a major controversy. And the Gemara says like this: Ela hai Tanahu. It is the following Tana. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Okay, and this brisa is anonymous, but the brisa says as follows: Michal bas Kushi. Michal, the daughter of a Kushite. Okay, why she's called daughter of a Kushite? We can discuss it now. Is because Shaul is called a Ben Kush, right? But or whatever he's called Kush. But basically, Michal is the daughter of Shaul. Okay, we know that she used to wear tefillin. The Chacham knew about this, and no one protested against her. V'ishta shel Yona, and the wife of Yona, Haisa Ola Regel would go to Yerushalayim for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. V'lo michu b'chachamim, and the Chum did not protest against her. The Ben Yoyada says something interesting. He says, why do these women choose to do these mitzvos? It has to do with their personal reality. Michal, we know, was childless, and the Sukkim talk about tefillin being the Mefarshim explain that tefillin is a segula. Is some way of bringing about a schus to bring about children. It speaks about children in the parshios of tefillin, and that's why Michal would put on tefillin. And we know that Yonah, what do we know about Yonah? We know about Yonah himself, what was his sin? What was Yonah's sin? He runs away from God, right? He doesn't want to see God. What is the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, going to Yerushalayim on Yom Tov? It's you should see the face of God. So she tried counteracting what her husband did. She would go to Yerushalayim because she wanted to, so to speak, see God. She was doing the exact opposite. She was trying to do tshuva for her husband. Fascinating. Okay, bottom line is they would do these mitzvos, and midalo bichu b'chachamim. The fact that chachamim did not protest against it, alma kasavri. Clearly they hold mitzvah saseh shelo hazman gramahi. Clearly they hold it is a positive commandment that is not time bound. Now, what does that mean? What that means is as follows. If a mitzvah has a particular time, we know that women are exempt, right? If it is not a time-bound mitzvah, if it is a mitzvah that always takes place...
But they can still do them.
We're going to get there. Hold on. Good. But the point is that, hold that thought. The point is that a mitzvah which is not time-bound is something that women are obligated to do. If it's time-bound, women are exempt from doing, right? So Michal is wearing... So Shabbos would be... If something was you're only obligated to do it on the weekday, not on Shabbos, that would be time-bound because it's mitzvah which you're obligated on Sunday through Friday and not on Shabbos, right? The fact that... the fact that Michal is wearing tefillin, the Gemara is assuming at this point, it must mean that it is not a time-bound mitzvah, and therefore it's something which Michal could and should be doing, right? And therefore you see that tefillin is not if tefillin is not a time-bound mitzvah, how do we see that? Because Michal's doing it. It must be that you're obligated to wear tefillin on Shabbos as well. You with me? Right? Because again, if it was a time-bound mitzvah, because if you were not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos, if Shabbos was not a time for tefillin, then it would be a time-bound mitzvah, and then Michal would not be putting on tefillin. The fact that she's putting on tefillin implies that it is not a time-bound mitzvah, which means that people are wearing it, that the mitzvah of tefillin really applies on Shabbos as well. Yeah? Getting funny faces. Yeah? You with me? Okay, so bottom line is, the Gemara wants to prove from here that this Tana holds that tefillin tefillin is something you wear on Shabbos because it is not a time-bound mitzvah, and therefore it's something which is applicable on Shabbos as well. Says the Gemara, V'dilma savrala, ki Rabbi Yossi. Maybe this is like Rabbi Yossi, and this is essentially what Jesse is alluding to Amar, Nashim Somchos Rishus, that women have the option to lean their hands on the offerings. Okay, so what that means is as follows. There is a pasuk. The pasuk speaks about the fact that when a person brings a karban, they should go ahead and lean their hands. When you bring a karbanos, you lean your hands on the karban. Okay, so if you bring the animal, you'd have to go ahead and do smicha. Smicha over here in this context means you put your hands on the animal. And the pasuk we learn from the Gemara. The Gemara tells us based on psukim that it's a mitzvah only that men are obligated to do. Okay, Rabbi Yossi comes along and says, yeah, it's true, only men are obligated to do it. But if a woman opts in, if she chooses to do so, she's allowed to do so, right? So it's over here. Who says that tefillin, just because Michal is putting on tefillin, doesn't mean she's obligated to put on tefillin? On the contrary, it could just mean that she is someone who is choosing to do tefillin. Just because someone's not obligated to do something does not mean that you are not able to do so if you so choose, right?
I think that it might be still time-bound.
It's still time-bound, but just like this mitzvah, or like sukkah, shofar, etc., etc. Women are not obligated to do so, but they could choose to do so, right? It's all that same principle. So the same thing, she could choose to do so. And the Gemara says, I will prove to you that that's the case. If you don't say this, okay, so what's the rest of the Brisa talk about? It talks about the wife of Yonah who goes and does Aliyah L'Regel, right? And they didn't protest. Everyone agrees, being Aliyah L'Regel, right? Going to Yerushalayim for Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, is that time-bound or not time-bound? Yeah. Of course it's time-bound. It's about 3 times a year. There's nothing more time-bound than that. And so clearly it's a time-bound mitzvah. And so in the same brisa, we see that we're talking about a time-bound mitzvah. And what do you see? Alex Rishus, Hachanam Rishus. The point is, it was a mitzvah she wasn't obligated to do, clearly, and yet she chose to do it. So say the same thing about tefillin. Tefillin is also not time-bound. It's just that she chose to do it. And therefore, the Gemara concludes this point that the fact that this brisa, right? So again, the brisa, we've once again rejected an authority who told us that Shabbos is not a time for tefillin because this brisa, you tried saying that. Sorry. We're trying to prove the opposite. We're trying to prove that Shabbos is a time for tefillin, and we tried to prove that from the fact that Michal put on tefillin. You see that it's not so much as time bound. What are you talking about? Just because she's putting it on doesn't mean she's obligated to do so. Maybe she's not obligated to do so, and it's just like sukkahs and shofar, etc., etc. And the proof is aliyah l'regel, which is in the same price, is clearly a time-bound mitzvah, and yet this woman is choosing to do so. Okay, so let's pause over here. A couple of very important machlokas come out of this. First of all, the question: there's a massive machlokas between the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah about what a woman is allowed to do when a woman does a mitzvah that she is not bound to do. Does she say a bracha or not? Right? There are those Shulchan Aruch, and based on other Rishonim, who says if she's not bound, so yes, she could choose to do it, but she can't say a bracha. Asher kidishanu b'mitzvos, that God that asher tzivan, right? That there is a mitzvah, right? That you gave us this mitzvah to do this. We're not commanded. A woman's not commanded to do so. How could she say a bracha? How could she say a bracha that she's supposed to tzivanu, that you sanctified us through the mitzvahs and you commanded us to sit in the sukkah? How could I say those words? I wasn't commanded to do so.
It's a collective bracha.
That's a collective bracha. Max says, okay, you're good company. Okay, fine. Okay, so Max says that it's allowed. Okay, and you're good company, and you're not Sephardi clearly. But the bottom line is Sephardim would say that a woman who puts who listens, for whether it's shofar or it's sukkah or it's lulav and esrog, she could choose to do so, but to say I was commanded, that'd be wrong, and therefore she wouldn't be allowed to say the bracha. Ashkenazim, the normative minhag of Ashkenazim is like Max is saying, it's a collective bracha. That women are allowed to say Asher Kidishanu. Okay, so what about tefillin? If we stop over here, and truth is the Gemara is not going to really change this point. So so if a woman wants to put on tefillin, based on where we are in this Gemara, would there be any issue with a woman putting on tefillin? No, it would be just like a woman sitting in a sukkah or shaking lulav and esrog. It should be totally fine. And many points to this Gemara. And the truth is, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, here it's the opposite. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, a woman is allowed. If she chooses to wear tefillin, she can wear tefillin. The Shulchan Aruch would say, okay, she wouldn't say a bracha. She wouldn't say a bracha because it is, it's according to the Shulchan Aruch, you never say a bracha on a mitzvah you're not commanded to do. But at the end of the day, of course, she could choose to put on tefillin. Yet the Ramah says you cannot. And what's very interesting, it's not found in the earlier source. It's certainly not found in the Gemara, but the Maharam, it's maybe possibly alluded to in the Gemara. But the Maharam, one of the Rishonim, says that the reason he says no, women are not allowed to wear tefillin. Why are they not allowed to wear tefillin? He says because of the menstrual cycle, and therefore there can be some time and there is a mitzvah when it comes to, there is a requirement with tefillin that you need to have a guf naki, you need to have the body has to be fully clean, and therefore the Maharam goes ahead and says a whole sweeping halacha, which is very unique, and that is that, and which we're somewhat aware of, and that is that typically a minor would I give my children lulav and esrog to shake, right? No problem, right? As soon as they know how to shake, I tell them, great, do the mitzvah, right? Tefillin is something we push off to the latest time possible, right? Some people have the minhag like 30 days before. My minhag, based on the Ramah, is that on the day of you term mitzvah, that's the day I put on tefillin. Actually, mine was on Pesach. I put on after I term mitzvah. Whatever. The point is, you don't put it on before. Why not? Why not? Every other mitzvah you do before, and actually tefillin is the hardest mitzvah, the one you need the most preparation for. It's like takes for whatever. It's not an easy thing now, whatever. But it's not easy to put on tefillin. It's actually very awkward and very uncomfortable. So why not? Because this concept of guf naki is not just a menstrual cycle. It's just because a child may pass gas or whatever it's going to be. They're not going to have the proper state of physical, cleanliness, and therefore, because the Maram says, therefore we don't give it to minors, and therefore because the menstrual cycle, women will not wear tefillin at all. Okay, this is codified by the Ramah. It's most of the Rishonim don't accept this view. It's a minority view that the Ramah adopts, and that's more or less where this opinion comes from. Again, it's not found in the Gemara; it's found in the Rishonim, or one Rishon. Most Rishonim disagree and say, of course, women could wear tefillin. But again, you have the Maharam and the Ramah codifies this, and it was more or less, and throughout history, we certainly have examples of women wearing tefillin, but the Ramah seems to have been adopted as normative halacha that women are not to wear tefillin for this reason. Again, not found in the Gemara, based on a svara found by a Rishon. Not so clear why he came up with this svara. It's again not found in the Gemara, but that is more or less the source for women not wearing tefillin. Yeah.
It just seems like a very political issue. So we just accept. That's interesting. I just thought it wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah. So it's so again, it is not allowed. Again, the Maharam is not coming from any political this. Is not like anti.
Exactly.
It's a dasiach, it's a minority view. It's adopted by the Rama, which is the normative Ashkenazi ruling, and therefore it's become normative. I'm just pointing out that it's not sourced in the Gemara; it's sourced in the Rishonim, and which is not typical. It's typical, like you typically, based on when you finish the Gemara, like okay, it's tefillin, shofar, lulav, esrog, they're all the same. So it's just interesting this happened, but the bottom line is this is where halacha kind of evolved to, in the sense that normative Ashkenazi psak is not to. If someone were to go ahead and say, they wanted to wear tefillin, again, it's certainly a woman. It's certainly there is what to rely upon, but it's certainly not the normative psak. Okay, have a great day.